It all starts now. Check your program guide or booktv.org for more information.
My name is Dylan Krupp, and I'm an intern at Young America's Foundation. YAF is the premier outreach organization for the conservative movement with over 500 college and high school chapters around the country. Young America's Foundation helps ensure that America's youth are equipped with the knowledge of conservative principles, such as free enterprise, individual freedom, and traditional American values. Today, I have the privilege of introducing one of the most passionate voices in the conservative movement, Liz Wheeler. Liz Wheeler is a 30-year-old young conservative hailing from the heart of the Midwest. During college, Liz served on the Board of Zoning Appeals for her hometown in Ohio and was the youngest person in the city's history to hold that position. At the same time, Liz co-authored a book with 13 other young Americans about being a millennial generation conservative. The book, titled Young, Conservative, and Why It's Smart to Be Like Us, reached #2 on Amazon's Kindle bestseller list in the civics category. Liz has spoken to conservative groups about the role of government in our society and how to win the youth vote, and has been interviewed on several radio shows nationwide. She has hosted the show Tipping Point with Liz Wheeler on One America News Network since 2015. In August of 2016, Liz was named a top 10 30 under 30 conservative rising star by Red Alert Politics. Liz is also the author of the new book Tipping Points, How to Topple the Left's House of Cards, available for pre-order now and available on Tuesday, August 6th in stores. Liz is also a graduate of Penn State University with a bachelor's degree in political science and a minor in homeland security. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Liz Wheeler.
Thank you so much. Good morning to everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Liz Wheeler. I host the show Tipping Point on One America News Network. Thank you. On July 5th of this year, the day after Independence Day, after my show, I logged into Twitter, as one does, and found myself blocked by none other than everybody's favorite socialist AOC. Blocked. Now, here's the thing. I'm always respectful. I'm always civil. I have even defended AOC, whose political policies I think are delusional, dippy, and dangerous to our nation. I have defended her against mean comments about her looks or her age or demeaning comments about her past history as a bartender. When I rebut AOC's tweets, I only present facts, nothing personal. So you know what that means? Somebody is threatened by facts and the truth. This is the tweet which made AOC block me. Let me read it to you. AOC tweeted, "Trump spent millions on a poorly attended one-day parade days after he couldn't afford toothpaste and soap for caged children. Did he ask Congress for military parade money? No. Trump held these kids hostage to secure billions for their abusers. Congress needs to see that." So I responded, and I said, stop. You voted no on a $4.5 billion bill to give emergency humanitarian aid relief to these migrant children in the border detention centers. If you wanted to help the kids, you could have, but you didn't. That's the tweet that made her block me, because 25,000 people retweeted and liked that tweet, and more than 250,000, yes, thank you, and over 250,000 other people saw it. essentially, the truth stings if you are a socialist. But AOC is a public official. It is a critical part of our public dialogue and our self-governance to hold elected officials accountable. By the way, I'm also team never block on Twitter. I have legitimately never blocked a single person, even a troll, on Twitter. I love engaging with people who disagree with me, but I guess AOC is not confident enough in her principles to do the same thing. Also, you would have to be a tech-illiterate granny to think that blocking somebody prevents them from seeing your tweets. So that means, this is important, that means the only reason to block somebody, if they're being civil and respectful, as I was, is so your ideology isn't challenged. There's a fitting word for that somewhere. Oh, that's right, that word is cowardice. Now, there were some blue check marks who tried to blame me for getting blocked as if I did something inappropriate or wrong to deserve being blocked, other than challenging Congresswoman AOC's congressional voting record, as if my fact check were equal in any way to violence. And here's what I would say to them. Don't even think about blaming me for violence. Violence and threats are 100% wrong. Duh. And it's a hideous and false accusation to try to blame me for other people's disgusting behavior. I challenged a congresswoman's voting record in Congress, for goodness sake. And let me remind those on the radical left who maliciously and falsely try to conflate civil criticism of our government with violence. Here is your daily reminder that that very same week, a domestic terrorist, an Antifa thug, attacked an ICE facility with a rifle and with bombs, and the left didn't care. In Portland, Oregon last month, independent journalist Andy Ngo was brutally beaten by Antifa thugs so badly that he suffered a brain hemorrhage. The Democratic mayor of Portland, his name is Ted Wheeler, he refused on Twitter to condemn Antifa by name. And I would know, I asked him to condemn Antifa by name. And you know how he responded? He said he condemns all violence, vaguely. He refused to condemn the attackers by name. And again, the Democrats didn't care. This is what the left does. They don't like my facts debunking their leftist ideology, so they try to define my speech as violence. This is the sneaky tactic they use to try to silence me. Because if my speech is violence, then they have to shut me down, right? I am here to tell you this morning, do not fall for it. Refuse to be silent in the face of leftist bullying. This is perhaps the most critical point about AOC blocking me too. Congresswoman AOC does not just want an echo chamber of her own ideology for herself. She's not just bothered by seeing my responses to her tweets herself. She's preventing her nearly 5 million followers from seeing the truth. My responses on her tweets are, or were, frequently the top-rated responses on her tweets. That scares her. Why would that scare somebody confident in their policy positions, confident that they were telling the truth? Why wouldn't she want her followers to see facts and figures and numbers? Unless she's lying, and she knows she's lying. The point is, you and I today, as young Americans and young conservatives, we should do the opposite of AOC. We should not back down from criticism of our policy positions if we truly believe what we say we believe. We should welcome criticism. You see a tweet of mine that you don't like, that you think's wrong? Bring it on. Prove to me, show me, tell me, convince me why I'm wrong. I welcome that. The radical left blocks for that. At the end of the day, part of me was annoyed to be blocked by AOC. I truly enjoyed debunking her daily lies. But part of me was delighted because AOC just proved that the tactics in my book work. AOC got so scared when I used the tactics in my book on her and exposed her lie that she blocked me. She tried to silence me. So let me tell you briefly about my book so you know what I mean. I spent the last year, this whole past year, working on this book. It's called Tipping Points: How to Topple the Left's House of Cards. And finally, after what seems like an eternity, we are now just 4 days away from publication date. The book releases on Tuesday, August 6th. So everybody in this room who has a copy of my book, you will be the first ones to read this. I wrote this book because politicians like AOC lie. They lie all the time. And in my book, I show you exactly how to debunk the lies of the left in order, of course, to ultimately defeat the radical leftist ideology. Because, and this is what I wrote in my book, I quote myself here, liberals don't peddle their extreme progressive agenda haphazardly. They do it on purpose, with a purpose. In other words, AOC did not block me on Twitter on a whim. This is part of the strategy of the left. The left is trying to create a binary choice, and I break this down in detail in my book. Either, on one hand, you adhere to the radical leftist ideology, or the only alternative is you are a bad person. In my case, as I said before, they tried to claim I was a person spewing violent speech. That's what AOC did. She tried to give me this binary choice. Either I swallow her lies without questioning them, like, yes, my queen, or evidently I deserve to be blocked. So you can see this binary choice everywhere you look. It's not just AOC, it's not just on Twitter. You can look at the news from the past week or two, and you can see this binary choice tactic that the left uses. And we'll use Congresswoman Ilhan Omar as an example of this too. So Ilhan Omar is a bigot. Among other things, like claiming that Jews hypnotize the world, accusing US politicians who support Israel of being bought off by the Jews. Ilhan Omar supports the anti-Semitic BDS movement that does not recognize Israel's right to defend themselves. Thank you, you should be booing for that. That does not recognize Israel's right to exist and actually punishes Israel for defending herself against Palestinian terror attacks. But Ilhan Omar, she doesn't recognize, she ignores the Palestinian terrorism and instead compares the Jewish state of Israel to Nazi Germany. The reason she does this is very important, the reason she does this is to give you that binary choice. Either you agree with her radical ideology, her anti-Semitism, or you are a bad person who is as bad as Nazi Germany. Do you see the binary choice in there? This is the strategy of the entire socialist squad right now. Another member of the squad, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, said last week, this is about race, she said, and I quote here, "We don't need more brown faces who don't want to be brown voices," insinuating that if you want to be a real person of color, you must adhere to her radical leftist ideology. Otherwise, you're just a traitor to your race. See what she's doing? She's giving people that binary choice. Either you adhere to what she's saying, you obey her, or you're a bad person. But here's the thing. Once you understand the tactics used by the radical left, these tactics, they're easy to destroy. They're easy to debunk. So they told me that I only have 4 hours, not a minute longer, to speak to you today. So I can't show you all of the tactics the left uses, all of the ones I detail in my book, but the binary choice tactic is a favorite right now among the left. And once you recognize it, you can, and you should, everyone in this room should shove it off track. And I show you how to shove it off track in my book too. I don't just tell you what the left is doing, I tell you how to counter what the left is doing. I lay out for you 11 tactics you can use to rhetorically trap the left in their own lies. And this morning I'm going to show you 2 of those tactics to round out my example. So once you identify the tactic that's being used by the left, in this case, it's the binary choice tactic, you can counter that tactic by verbally calling it out to their face and explaining to them what they are doing. Nobody likes to be told what they are doing. Like I did before with AOC when I said, AOC gave me a binary choice. Either I agree with her ideology or I am a bad person who is inciting violence, When AOC tries to define my speech as violence, it is because if she defines my speech as violence, then she has to shut it down. She has to silence me, and she wants to silence me because she doesn't want her followers to see the truth and to see her lies exposed. So literally, that is the tactic, spell it out. That is the counter tactic. Spell out the tactic the left is using in order to achieve the goal they want, and explain then why they want to achieve that goal. And then, once you spell out their tactic and destroy their point, then you can use another tactic to make your point. My favorite tactic is redefining the question, which is simple. Instead of answering the question that the left asks, you start your answer by reframing the question to a question that you'd prefer to answer. So take the squad again. Take that tweet from AOC. Essentially her question inherent to that tweet was, how can President Trump keep migrant kids in cages? That's the essence of her tweet, right? So turn that sucker around before you answer it. Say, how could Obama keep kids in cages, and how could Democrats during the Obama administration say nothing about it? How can you claim that you care about those kids in cages if you, as a sitting congresswoman, had the opportunity to vote on a bill that would have given humanitarian aid to these children, and you chose to vote no? See how that works? So these are just 2 of the 11 rhetorical tactics that I demonstrate. I believe it's in chapter 4 of my book, Tipping Points. And this is why, honestly, I was kind of flattered that AOC blocked me, because she's just proving that the tactics in my book, which I used on her, work. So thank you, Congresswoman, for that. The other important thing that I want to talk about tonight is what I call one of the 5 crucial tipping points in our country. In my book, I identify 5 battlegrounds where the left is trying to overtake our culture and undermine our cultural norms in order to impose their radical leftist ideology on us instead. It's very simple. If we know where the left is attacking and how they are trying to impose their agenda on us and what tactics they use in a rhetorical sense, we can stop them before they succeed. And isn't that why we are all here today? One of these crucial tipping points is the left's effort to morph politically correct culture into law. This is what I mean. Did you hear the story, I believe it was late last week, about the transgender person who is suing a waxing boutique in Canada? Yeah, you heard. I knew you heard. Because this person identifies as a woman, but the esthetician declined to do a bikini wax for the trans person because this transgender woman has male genitalia. Yeah, so here are the facts of this story. It's a lovely little story. A transgender person in Canada forced an immigrant woman to close down her business because the immigrant woman declined to wax the testicles of the transgender person, and he sued her for it. This transgender person is trying to use the law. Think about this for a second. This transgender person is trying to use the force of the law to force a woman in Canada to touch his genitals even though she doesn't want to. She couldn't afford to fight this lawsuit, so she had to shut down her business. This transgender person's name is Jessica Yanev, and as I mentioned before, this person was born male, now identifies female, but still has male genitalia. And he's attracted to women, he says. He calls himself a proud lesbian in his Twitter bio. Now here's a topic that I hoped I'd never have to talk about into a microphone at a conference. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Waxing male genitalia and waxing female genitalia are 2 very different things that require 2 very different skill sets. Most waxing boutiques do Brazilian waxing for women only. You can Google the waxing places in your area and see it for yourself, although please don't tell your parents you learned that at the AF conference. The Canadian estheticians that this person is suing do Brazilian and bikini waxes for women only. But here's the thing. The radical left has told us that transgender women are not transgender women. The left has told us they are real women, even if they are born male and have male genitalia like Jessica Yanev. And so Yanev is claiming that these estheticians are violating his human rights by refusing to wax his testicles, even though there is another waxing boutique very nearby that specializes in male waxing. He does not want to go to that one, no. This transgender person wants to legally compel women to touch his testicles, even though they don't want to. You want to talk about the Handmaid's Tale for a second? These leftists want government to declare it a human right for a man to force a woman to do something to his genitals that she doesn't want to do. Now, you might be thinking, but wait a second here. Where are the hashtag #MeToo warriors? Where are the My Body, My Choice protesters? Where are all those angry ladies in white bonnets and red robes who follow around Vice President Mike Pence? Where are they in this story? And the answer to that is, when it comes to defending an immigrant woman from an attack waged by a transgender person, those leftists and those feminists are silent. So this is what I mean when I say one of the tipping points in our nation is the left's effort to morph politically correct culture into law. This is the politically correct transgender ideology that we conservatives have warned about. This is not about cultural tolerance of people suffering from gender dysphoria. It's not about tolerance of people who are different. It's not about compassion for these people. It's not about including transgender people in our society. It's not about stopping bullying, all of which are good and fine things. But that is not the ultimate goal of the left. The left wants to morph the politically correct culture into law, the politically correct culture that says, if you believe in basic biology, you are a bigot. If you righteously criticize a transgender person for trying to force a woman to wax his testicles, then you're transphobic. You might recognize something in this story, the binary choice fallacy again. If you don't adhere to the radical leftist ideology, then you are a bad person, a bigot. This is what the transgender movement has been about from the beginning. The transgender movement is a political force that wants to mandate that every single one of us in this room violate our religious beliefs, violate our personal views, violate our workplace, violate our skill sets, and compel us to reject basic biology under penalty of the law. Or else, like this immigrant woman in Canada, you will be sued and forced to shut down your business, and likely, if the left gets their way, socially ostracized. To the squishy Republicans, especially in Congress, who are afraid to talk about social issues that make them uncomfortable, don't say we didn't warn you. Now we have to talk about waxing testicles. This is what I meant when I said the left does not peddle their extreme progressive agenda haphazardly. They do it on purpose, with a purpose. And their purpose is to morph politically correct culture into law and legally compel an immigrant woman to call a man a woman and touch his testicles even though she doesn't want to. Again, this is just one of 5 tipping points that I talk about in my book. There are 4 other ways the left is trying to undermine the principles on which our nation was built and instead impose on us a radical leftist socialist ideology. I don't have time to tell you all the 4 other tipping points, or else Spencer's going to come out from backstage and kick me off the stage. But what I will say is the left counts on, they rely implicitly on one thing to protect their lies and their tactics and their strategy. They rely on the mainstream media. So let me paint you a little picture of the mainstream media's protection racket on behalf of the radical leftists. And conveniently for me, it's particularly easy this week because this has not been a good week for the left or the mainstream media. But I repeat myself. This week, the mainstream media focused their outrage on dishes. That's right, dinnerware, that off which we eat, plates in particular. I'm not making this story up. Did you hear about this story? Macy's had a set of dishes, a set of plates on sale that had concentric circles drawn on the plates. They had quippy descriptions of each circle. The smallest circle read skinny jeans, the middle circle read favorite jeans, and the larger circle read mom jeans. Obviously, they were talking about portion control. And then did you see the social justice warriors doing their virtual march on Twitter against this? You would have thought this was as serious of a human rights abuse as, I don't know, Antifa beating up a journalist so badly his brain bled. Yahoo News accused Macy's of promoting eating disorders. Time magazine accused Macy's of body shaming. This whole non-controversy was started, actually, originally by a CBS science correspondent who tweeted that she wanted to get the plates banned, illegal, in all 50 states. And for a portion of the news cycle last week, this story is what the mainstream media spent their time and their effort and their focus covering. Meanwhile, we have a transgender testicle controversy putting immigrant women out of business. There's a headline for you. We have brutal violence from Antifa, domestic terror thugs targeting independent journalists. We have the fact that AOC and her squad are so radical, so anti-Semitic, that AOC actually called the Israeli government criminal and white supremacist Jews. There's a contradiction for you. We have Democrat politicians in our Congress who are embracing the socialist squad. They are refusing to disavow their anti-Semitism and socialism. We have Democrats ignoring the plight of the people in Baltimore because they'd rather criticize a tweet from the president. We have Democrats actually embracing race baiter Al Sharpton, who called Jews bloodthirsty Jews and once walked next to a protester whose sign read, "The white man is the devil." And yet, the mainstream media, what do they choose to cover? They choose to report on Macy's dishes. The mainstream media is more outraged by objects like plates than about real issues. So do not believe, do not buy into this fake outrage. This is CYA from the mainstream media. CYA stands for cover your ass. The mainstream media is covering for the Democrats, and the Democrats rely on this. So don't let anybody, even within our own party, tell you to ignore the mainstream media and pretend that they don't exist. The bias and the lies of the mainstream media must be debunked if we are going to defeat the left. And in my book, I show you exactly how to do this. So the message I want to leave with you this morning is this: do not let the left silence you. Do not let the left dictate what you are allowed to say. Do not let the left define the narrative. Do not let the left claim moral superiority ever. Do not let the left lie. And when they do lie, call them out. And when they block you for calling them out, call them out even louder. And remember, we do not take marching orders. As young conservatives, we do not take marching orders from a party that says that speech from conservatives is violence, but violence from the left is speech. We do not take marching orders from a party that teaches kindergartners in public schools in California that men can be women if they want to be, so that this same party can compel immigrant women to touch men's genitals even if the woman doesn't want to wax his testicles. We do not take marching orders from a party that tells lies so often and so blatantly that one of their own congresswomen, AOC, responds to criticism about her voting record in Congress by trying to silence her political opposition with a big fat block on Twitter. Our response to that as young conservatives should be thank you, next. All right, before we get to questions, make sure you tune into my show weeknights at 9 p.m. Eastern on One America News Network. Guys, follow me. Follow me on Instagram, Liz_OANN. Follow me on Twitter at Liz_Wheeler. Send me pictures and tell me what you think when you read my book. I want to hear what you think. And thank you so much for having me tonight. You all are the next generation of patriots in our nation, and our nation is lucky to have you.
Hi.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, my name is Madeline Mello. I'm from the University of Michigan. My question to you is, a lot of my peers are one issue in politics. They just vote on one issue.
Right.
For example, I get the climate change. All they care about climate change. That's all that matters. How do I convince them to not only care about other issues, but just to talk about other issues and not to focus on just one and vote that way?
Right. Well, typically, I think when people are one-issue voters, it's because they don't understand how other issues impact them in their daily life. This will become very apparent to your peers when they graduate college and get a job. They'll start seeing how much the government takes out of their paycheck every week, and suddenly they'll start caring about taxes. Suddenly they'll start caring about the job market and stuff like that. But you can also, I mean, if you want to talk about social issues, you can also bring up some of the most egregious human rights issues that have to do, or that are happening in our nation. I mean, abortion impacts everybody. We all know somebody who has had an abortion. We all know somebody who has thought about having an abortion. You can talk about that issue with them. You can bring up we all have this inherent part of our human nature that wants to stick up for people who don't have a voice to speak up in defense of themselves. And so you can frame other issues like that. You can say, listen, I care about abortion because all of these women, all of these unborn women, aren't getting their chance at life. I care about the economy because, for women, the better the job market, the more choice that we have in what we do about their life, or our own lives. And you can kind of show them how the other issues impact them, because I think for the most part, young people assume that all of those other political issues just happen in the swamp and don't impact them at all, and that's not true.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, Liz.
Hi.
Morning. Anyway, so I just wanted to say thank you for the book. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And also, over the course of the time you've been a newswoman up until 4 or 5 years ago, and by the way, we're all so happy you did.
Thank you.
A lot's happened, and a lot's changed within the left, and I wanted to ask you, what was the biggest learning point you had in dealing with the left and their ideologies? And not only that, but what's the biggest mistake you see young conservatives like us make when we become activists and when we get involved?
So that's kind of a two-part question.
Yeah.
What's the biggest mistake, and then what's the biggest change? I mean, it's actually remarkable, to address your first question first, it's actually remarkable to step back and look at this. It's not really an evolution, it's more of a devolution of the left from the party of Barack Obama to, the party of the socialist squad. I mean, this is just a matter of a couple of years, and they're virtually unrecognizable. And the policies that are being pushed by the radical left right now are obviously very dangerous for our nation, but at the same time, it should give us an advantage as conservatives, because the majority of people, even Democratic voters, don't want socialism. They don't want the Green New Deal as it's written. They don't want to be kicked off their private insurance. And so I think the biggest mistake that is made and can be made by young conservatives is not really focusing in on hammering those ideas. I mean, talking about the bad parts of them, take Medicare for All, for example. Like 180 million Americans would lose their current health care coverage if we went on Medicare for All, and it would inevitably lead to rationing. That's not hyperbolic, and that's not hypothetical. I mean, you can look at socialist-style government-run healthcare systems in other westernized nations like Canada and like the UK. In the UK right now, children who have cystic fibrosis are being denied life-saving medication by the government for one reason, and the government admits the reason: because they don't want to pay for it. That will happen here if we allow this type of system to be imposed on us by the radical left. And as young conservatives, if we get too wonky in our debates, if we talk too big picture and we neglect to tell people how it's going to impact them and how it's going to hurt them, then it's going to allow those very radical views to become mainstream versus being relegated to the fringe where they ought to stay.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Hello,
Hi, what's your name?
Liam, but this is for the audience. The Rapture, Cooney, College of Lake County. I'm not calling myself Jesus. I'm sorry. That would be disrespectful if you think of that. But
No, I'm not. It's obviously some inside joke that I don't get, so carry on.
Okay, let me explain really quickly. So in this time, I'm talking about my question.
Go ahead and ask your question, I think.
Okay. In a time of leftist domination and violence,
Yes.
along with suppression, how can I convince many people that we must stand together? Pretty much, it's a time we must commit civil disobedience. For instance, what happened to independent journalists. We have to unite in order to stay safe and to survive the best we can.
What do you mean civil disobedience?
Kind of like, hey, we're going to do what we want. It is justified by the Constitution, but somehow you got people in government who do whatever the hell they want to us.
I'm not sure that's the correct attitude. The way that I would look at it is it's
You got to stay strapped, you know?
Well, the way that I would look at it is it's very important that we live in a nation that abides by the rule of law. And just because we don't like the law doesn't immediately give us justification to violate the law. There are certainly situations in our nation and in our nation's history where it has been necessary to participate in civil disobedience, but one of the ways that our nation is set apart from other nations is when we, the people, have a problem with what our government officials are doing, we have recourse, legal recourse to fix that. We can vote for different representatives. We can, we can lobby our representatives, call them. We can speak out. We can write op-eds. We can propose ideas. There are so many different things that we can do to legally and lawfully prevent the radical left from taking over that I don't think our knee-jerk reaction should be civil disobedience. In fact, I can't think of an example right now in our nation where civil disobedience is warranted. Was there something you were thinking in particular?
Well, kind of like what kind of happened in Deerfield, if you ever heard what happened. That would kind of be one example I could think of right now. I kind of thought about making one request that maybe we start a petition for that poor woman in Canada to save her business.
That's not civil disobedience.
But I know that's not civil disobedience.
That's actually, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying that's not civil disobedience. I would probably recommend to you that you put the idea of civil disobedience aside for the time being and make a list of things that can be done lawfully to engage with our government within the rule of law.
Because we got to know our options.
No, that's not true. That's not true. We have plenty of options. I just gave you about 4 or 5 of them. Plenty of options. You can vote. You can take part in a campaign. You can write op-eds for the newspaper. You can go to town hall events. You can run for office yourself. I mean, I can keep listening here, but you have plenty of options. And I would encourage you to try all those first. Thank you for the question.
Hi, my name is Courage. I go to the University of Michigan, and I slightly disagree with your point on Ilhan Omar.
Please tell me. I want to hear this.
Okay.
What did I say in my speech? I said, if you see a problem with my tweet, prove me wrong. Show me. Please show me.
Okay. So I hope no one gasps after I say this, but I do not think that Ilhan Omar is an anti-Semite. Okay? One moment.
Let him tell us why, and then we'll tell him why he's wrong.
Of course. So under that same logic, I would consider Trump to be an anti-Semite because he told the Republican Jewish coalition, he suggested that, I know why you guys aren't going to vote for me. I don't want your money. It's on recording. Okay? So what I'm saying is, if the right wants to be nuanced about anti-Semitism or bigotry in general, they should also hold Trump to the standard that Ilhan Omar is, because they're
bigotry is wrong. Bigotry is wrong no matter what party it comes from. I agree with you. Let me ask you this question.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead and ask me.
Describe to me what the BDS movement is.
The BDS movement is a movement to boycott Israel. I personally support the state of Israel. I don't agree with their movement. I just think that a lot of people in that movement.
But what is it? What is the movement?
It's the boycott, divestment, and sanction.
And sanction, right? And why do they want to boycott, divest, and sanction Israel?
Because they don't agree with the state of Israel. Either they don't.
They don't agree with what part?
Huh?
What part do they not
agree
agree with?
with its existence.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
sure.
Okay, so.
Why do they not agree with Israel's existence?
There are various reasons why people don't agree with Israel's existence.
I'm talking about the BDS movement. Why does the BDS movement? Yeah.
I'm not sure as to what their official position is.
So that's the critical part. So I'm not trying to slam you down here. I'm just helping you think critically about this, because the BDS movement, you're correct, is boycott, divest, and sanction of Israel because they don't agree with Israel's existence or right to defend herself. But you have to ask the question, why do they not agree with Israel's right to defend herself? Every other country in the world, if they are being attacked, has a sovereign right to defend their own people. So that question, why, is your answer. When you have to answer that question, why? Why do they want to boycott, divest, and sanction Israel out of existence? And there's only one reason for that. The reason for that is because Israel is the Jewish state of Israel. It is because the people that live there because it is the Jewish state. And when you hold Jewish people to different standards, when Ilhan Omar does not support sanctions on Venezuela, who is oppressing their people and starving their people, does not want sanctions on Venezuela, but does want sanctions on Israel, when Ilhan Omar doesn't want sanctions on Saudi Arabia or Iran, or other Middle Eastern nations who throw gay people off the tops of buildings, but does want sanctions on Israel for defending her people against terror attacks. And the reason for the double standard is because the state of Israel is Jewish and the other nations aren't. That is anti-Semitism. It is because they are Jewish, and that is what makes it wrong. You can follow up. You can follow up.
I wasn't finished making my point.
You can follow up. Go ahead.
The point
No, it's okay. I have plenty of it,
The point was, in terms of bigotry,
yes,
this president is a president who wanted to ban people of an entire religion in his campaign. I have this on video. All of you.
No, wait a second.
I have this.
That's
on
totally
video.
fine. I'm happy to address
what
this.
I'm saying,
but you
if
can
the
finish
right
your sentence
wants to be
first.
serious about bigotry,
Okay.
they should condemn it on all sides. When Trump introduced this plan,
yes,
the Republican Party stood by him. If they want to talk about anti-Semitism from the left, why can't we talk about when it comes from the right or any type of bigotry that
Why
comes
can't
from
we
the
talk
right?
about it both? Let me address the Muslim ban that you're talking about. Let me address the Muslim ban, and I'll tell you why it's different, because it's important to understand. I want to tell you why it's different. So the Supreme Court last year upheld President Trump's right to this immigration policy. The left calls it a Muslim ban, but that's a mischaracterization of it, because there are, I believe, 7 Muslim-majority nations whose immigration is being restricted into our country. And what do those 7 Muslim nations have in common? They're Muslim, right? What else do they have in common? Terrorism.
I'm not talking about his travel ban. I'm talking about the
Let me finish
ban
what I'm
that he
saying.
originally proposed.
You're talking about the travel ban. It is one and the same. It's just mischaracterized by the left. Those 7 nations have in common, they support and they fund terrorism. If this were a Muslim ban, why isn't the most populated Muslim nation in our entire world on this list?
I'm not talking about this. I agree with this travel ban. I'm talking about the ban that he proposed while we were running for president.
It's the same thing. It was just mischaracterized. That I understand what he said. He said, I want to propose a complete and utter moratorium on the immigration of Muslims into our nation. But then when he proposed the plan, it was based on terrorism, not based on a religion. Do you have a problem? I appreciate the back and forth. Hi, what's your name?
Hi, my name is Jacob. I was graciously given the position to talk by him, so I thought I should mention that. So with the citizenship test on
Yes.
the U.S. Census, is there a way to guarantee that that we know who is putting down that name, like it's truly them? I don't want to put social security numbers or green card numbers or visa numbers down, but is there a way to truly guarantee that it's actually them?
What do you mean? Are you talking about when it comes, are you worried about people who are non-citizens identifying as citizens?
Yes. So they will some people can put down social security numbers and names and still get it correct. There's ways to buy it on the dark web and everything. Is there a way to guarantee that the person who's writing that name and social down is actually them?
Well, I would probably need to see figures about how many people buy that kind of information on the dark web for the census. My guess would be it's not too many. In regards to the constitutionality of the citizenship question, I think that's probably a more important question to be asking and a more important question to be answering. I think it's pretty obvious that it's not unconstitutional.
Yeah,
it's a totally normal thing to have on our census. There's only been one census in the history of our nation. I think we've had 20 census, and there's only been one that we didn't have that as a question, and that was in 2010 after Barack Obama took it off. But when the left tells us that this hasn't been on the census since the 1950s, that's not true. It's been on the long form version, which I think goes to maybe 1 in 6 households.
Yes.
In regards to the verification, I don't know about buying things on the dark web, but I doubt that that's very prevalent.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I appreciate the question. Thank you all for having me tonight. Have a fun rest of your conference.